line for your quarterback this season?
The same thing that's on the line for him every year going forward, that he doesn't win the Super Bowl. First, reach it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he's got to win it. And that is the level of his legacy. The level of his legacy.
Oh,
all right, that's just for emphasis.
Drew thought that was a bar. So
It was definitely a bar. Level of his legacy. Because his legacy, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's got the 2 MVPs, right?
Yeah.
He's going to be viewed as like an somewhat all-time great quarterback.
Iconic.
Right? Iconic for sure. Changed the game to a degree. But if he wins a Super Bowl, I mean, honestly, with the way he's getting better every year. With what he did last year, I think clearly top 10 all-time is on the board, maybe top 5. I mean, the way he's last year, you can't really have a better season than he had, but he has to cap it off with the playoffs. You can't be the only 2-time or multiple MVP winner without a Super Bowl. And you can't play, I don't know about your worst games, but you can't drop off this much in the playoffs. Even last year when he played well, second half he was great, but he hadn't turned the ball over all year. And then he has 2 in the big playoff game. So that, this is a compliment to him, though. I mean, LeBron was here, Michael Jordan was here, Peyton Manning was here. You know, the all-time greats, this is what we expect. You have to cap it off with a championship. And so it's a compliment, but he's also got to get it done.
Yeah, the level of his legacy.
You like that?
That really should have been a bar.
Yeah.
Really fantastic. Yeah, is it Dan Marino, or does he win a Super Bowl and suddenly now we're talking about him versus Mahomes and who can win more rings, and every year we're having the same conversation and we're measuring his progress in terms of, okay, he beat Pittsburgh. He finally got over the Pittsburgh hump. And then he finally, in this last playoff run, it was really the tight end that had the drop at the end, and he could have easily won that game, but unfortunately he hasn't. And so when you're a 2-time MVP and really could have been a 3-time MVP,
a lot of people thought he was going to be.
And you can't seem to get over that hump. You're just it's a discussion and a interesting topic every year until you make it something more meaningful.
And listen, we have seen, Peyton Manning is the hope. Because Peyton, and by the way, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, Peyton Manning.
Yeah, and Peyton had he had to deal with the Patriots, which is
right.
Yeah,
I want to get to that because he doesn't really have to deal with the Chiefs. He's lost to the Chiefs once in the playoffs. They haven't been good enough in the playoffs to get the privilege of playing the Chiefs. I was on Mina Kimes, my friend but hated rival, her podcast this weekend, and we got in an impromptu argument about the Ravens. And one of the things she said is Aaron Schatz, who used to be with Football Outsiders and created DVOA, which is kind of a catch-all team ranking, the 2 best teams of, I think, since DVOA's existed the last 25 years, over a 5-year stretch, to not make a Super Bowl, are the last 5 years Buffalo Bills in first place, and the last 5 years Baltimore Ravens in second place. And she made the point, she's like, so that's really, a compliment to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And I said, well, it is for Buffalo, but it's not for Baltimore. The Chiefs have beaten Baltimore in the playoffs once. They are not the 90s Knicks to Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Where it's just every year we have a hard ceiling. And the reason I said the hope is Peyton Manning is because Peyton Manning did eventually get over the hump by winning, but Peyton Manning always struggled in the playoffs. Yeah. Even when they won, he struggled. That playoff run that they won the Super Bowl, Josh, fact check me on this because it's going to sound wrong, but I think in the playoff run he had 4 touchdowns and 7 picks when they won the Super Bowl. His first Super Bowl with.
Yeah, I'm the one that talked about all of this before when Lamar Jackson lost against the Buffalo Bills, where I went through Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, and I highlighted the difference was that when it was time for these for their teams to step up and the quarterback to step up, whichever quarterback we're using at the time of this, in any given example, the team stepped up. The team supported the comeback win, whatever it may be. And that's what Lamar Jackson was essentially robbed of. I mean, at this point, especially if you took away a couple of those garbage touchdowns with Mahomes in the Super Bowl, it's like you would be like, his touchdown to interception ratio in Super Bowls is awful, quite frankly. You see Stafford in his playoff run in Super Bowl, interceptions. Joe Burrow, interceptions. Like I said, Tom Brady, interceptions. All of them. But the problem is for Lamar is that he's never been given the opportunity to then overcome any of the, I don't want to say growing pains, but just any of the issues that he's had kind of throughout a playoff run. Now, the problem is we take these conversations too extreme. This topic specifically too extreme, because you have one camp where they're just like, Lamar Jackson has done nothing wrong in the playoffs, and you have other people that say Lamar Jackson chokes, he's awful in the playoffs. And it's just like, neither is true. It's like anything, it's somewhere in the middle. And Nick even just recently said, like a couple shows ago or whatever, was like, Lamar Jackson actually hasn't played great in any playoffs. He had like one great game, and then he had one good half, and like that's it, right? And because like Bruce showed like his last like 3 playoff games or 4 playoff games and compared them to his like first chunk of playoff games and how much better they are. And Nick was like, oh, that's not really true. They're not actually really that good. Like he played awful against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, etc., etc. And that is, but like at the same time, what Nick said though about the Chiefs like not being their kryptonite, it is true. And it is what I said when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, where I was just like, the Bills, the Ravens, etc., like, you have zero excuses. You have zero excuses. You tell me that your quarterback is better than Jalen Herz, and you tell me that your franchise is better than the Philadelphia Eagles. That you guys build better teams, that you have better coaches. And yet, in the playoffs, you can't beat each other. You can't get it done, whether it's the Chiefs or the Bills or whatever. And yet, the Eagles dominated the Chiefs in a way that the Bills and the Ravens never have done. Never have done. And so it's like those things do matter when it comes down to it. So what's on the line for Lamar? I'm not being extreme here. Everything. Everything. Every year that Lamar Jackson doesn't win the Super Bowl, he gets farther away from being in the conversation of the greatest of all time. Like, that's what's actually at stake for Lamar. He wins a Super Bowl. First of all, people will instantly say that he's the best quarterback in the NFL. There'll be no like, well, what about, no. If he wins the Super Bowl, he will be without a shadow of a doubt. They won't say Josh Allen. They won't say Patrick Mahomes. They won't say, well, Patrick Mahomes won in 20. It doesn't matter. Lamar Jackson has been playing how he's been playing, and then he caps it off with the Super Bowl. He will be considered the best player, best quarterback in the NFL. And then all he would is have to win just like one more Super Bowl, right? If he can go back to back or something, like as long as Mahomes doesn't win anymore in that time frame, you would have real conversation, because people are already putting Mahomes in the GOAT conversation. Some people even still consider him the GOAT now, even after not three-peating and losing the Super Bowl. But if Lamar gets at least 2, you will have real conversations about him being the greatest of all time. They'll start pointing out very specific stats, the first 4,900, all that type of stuff. And they'll be very specific about it. 2 Super Bowls, 2 MVPs. Maybe at this point now it'd be like 3 MVPs, right? And it'll just kind of keep going. And then depending on how you play in the Super Bowl, if Lamar Jackson wins 2 Super Bowls and plays great, awesome, there's a real chance that he breaks Jalen Hurts' rushing record in a Super Bowl. Definitely possible. It's like you would then start to really look at the stats of like, okay, Patrick Mahomes has 3 Super Bowls, but Lamar Jackson has, 3 MVPs, 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, a higher completion percentage, more total yards per game, right? Like you'll start to go through all the other stuff. You'll say, yeah, Mahomes has done a little bit more, but Lamar Jackson has done it greater, has been greater. The greatest of all time. It's not the most of all time. It's the greatest of all time. So you start to have like real conversations about that. And again, in a situation where now maybe like Mahomes hadn't won now in a few years, it'll be like, well, you haven't won a Super Bowl in 3 years. And if Lamar Jackson has now won a couple, that means that Patrick Mahomes hasn't even gotten to the Super Bowl. And if he did in one of those years, that means he would have lost in another Super Bowl. Right? It just starts to hurt your argument more and more and more. So really, like, what's on the line for Lamar? Everything. Lamar's still young enough. The Ravens are still, fresh enough. That franchise is clearly run well enough where it's not like they're always teetering of just being a disaster. I mean, the Ravens could absolutely hit the reset button and within a year or two be back to competing with like a great team. Like, we know they know how to build great teams. We know they know how to draft. They know how to work in free agency. Like, they know what they're doing. They're a very well-run team. Even if they haven't been able to get over the hump recently, obviously. But there's no reason to believe that they're not going to be. There's no reason to believe that they're going to suddenly turn into the Cleveland Browns, right? We know that. Or the Cincinnati Bengals. That's never been in their history. At least not for as long as I've been watching them. Don't point to like some obscure 5-year window where they were awful. I don't care. But like, that's obviously not who they are now. And so it's just like, it's not impossible that if they start to get things going and they figure some stuff out in the playoffs with a little bit of luck from the football gods and some health, it's really not hard to imagine if in the next 5 years, 6 years, that the Ravens could win 2-3 Super Bowls. I mean, it's not out of the realm of the possibility. It's just not. Some of it might be partly how much money does Lamar take when it when it's up for him at a contract. And again, do you hit a draft pick or two? Do you get really lucky where you're like, oh gosh, we drafted this running back and he's a beast now for the next 5, whatever it may be. Like, you do that. I think with considering what Lamar has done in the NFL, the MVP, some of the records that he has, if he plays great in a couple playoff runs and wins 2 Super Bowls, and again, holds like some true records like rushing yards, a ridiculously high passer rating, high completion percentage, something that's very efficient, but then also like pretty stat hungry. I think if he just has 2 and Mahomes doesn't have any more at that point, there would be like real conversation. You would say, yeah, the Chiefs went to like all these AFC championship games, and yeah, they went to all these Super Bowls. Yeah, they were going for 3-peats and all that, but like, when you compare the Super Bowls, like Lamar Jackson has performed better. He's 2 for 2 in great Super Bowls. Kind of like what Jaylen Herz is doing, but just bigger stats, really, right? And we know Lamar Jackson definitely gets a lot more credit for his successes than a Jaylen Herz does. So I think it would be a real conversation. And if he doesn't, it just gets hard. If he doesn't win, it just gets harder and harder. You can keep blaming the teams and the players around them, and as long as that is a true statement, I will, those will be my takes. I am not a just, if you win, it's on the quarterback, and if you lose, it's on the quarterback. That's not how I operate. As long as it's actually accurate in that given moment that, okay, Lamar Jackson played great, but the defense was bad, whatever it may be. But it becomes harder and harder and harder to defend those takes. It just does. Even if they're accurate, even if they're real. I would say the other hard thing is that like they're both right and wrong, because they said like, oh, like the Ravens, the Chiefs specifically to the Ravens aren't their kryptonite, which is true, like in terms of like the direct like head to head. But what the Chiefs have been able to do for Patrick Mahomes, the support, the roster, the coaching, all of those things, they've been able to help support Patrick Mahomes reach his level of greatness, combined with now also the Super Bowls, in a way that the Baltimore Ravens have been unable to do. So, right, it's not like the Ravens are running into the Chiefs and the Chiefs just keep knocking them down. It's like, if it wasn't for the Chiefs, they'd win. That's not necessarily 100% true. But at the same time, if it wasn't for how well run the Chiefs have been, and Andy and Spags and Travis and all this, to be able to really support Patrick Mahomes in his own individual greatness, like he would be in similar situations as Josh Allen, as Lamar Jackson, as as any of these other situations. And so if the Ravens supported Lamar more and were able to get the job done more reliably, more consistently, help pick him up when he's not, perfect, and still be able to come away with wins, it's like, and in a lot of ways, Patrick, because of the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is living the life that Lamar Jackson could have been if he was just born to different parents, if he just went to a different team, or if his team just supported him just a little bit better. And again, don't get it twisted. It's not saying that it's just 100% the Ravens holding him back, or if only the Ravens supported him more, he would have, he'd be winning more and all of this. Like, that's not the take either. It's really not. It's just multifactored. There's many variables at play. There's moments that Lamar Jackson could have done more and could have helped write his own story. And there was times that the Ravens could have done more and helped support, that story being written. So it's just, if that's the problem when you don't win. When you don't win, you have to really kind of, look real closely. But when you win, it's just like, no, you won. I mean, seriously, at this point, I guarantee you, the average person, these guys, just casually hanging out, Mangini himself, does he really remember what Tom Brady had to do on all those playoff runs? Does he really remember the fourth Super Bowl? I don't even remember who he won the fourth Super Bowl. I don't even remember. Was it against the Rams? The Falcons? I don't know. I don't remember. I got to think about it. It's like I got to do the math. What year? What actually happened? Was he bad in the first quarter? Did he throw an interception? That interception. Oh, I see he has 2 interceptions. Was that a tip ball? Was that his fault? Did someone run the wrong route? Did he just make a terrible throw? Was he too aggressive? I don't remember, and neither do you. I don't know. But it's like, we just know that he won. And like, that's how it happens. You just remember that he won. And when you lose, it's just like, what actually happened? Do you think people are really going to remember Mark Andrews dropping that ball? They're going to say, he had a fumble and an interception, and they lost. Wasn't good enough. I mean, like, that's how it gets reduced down to. But when you win, you win. When you lose, you lose. So that's why everything's on the line for Lamar. And I think someone like Lamar, if he wins, it's the opposite of what we've seen with Jalen Herz. You will see the absolute masses, especially the mainstream media, minus, of course, Nick Wright, to 100% put all their support behind Lamar Jackson being the best quarterback in the NFL. And you will easily start to have people start to craft this. He is actually the greatest of all time. He just was lacking some of the team success, but his peak, if you had to pick your peak between, and you start to have some of these really specific conversations, like if you had to pick the best version of Mahomes or the best version of Lamar, who would you pick? And I'm telling you, there would be plenty of energy behind Lamar Jackson. But if you lose, it just all fades away. It just all becomes, it really just becomes meaningless, unfortunately for him. Not saying it's right, but that's just what happens. That's why we're still having this conversation. I mean, think about it. All these years later, we're still having this conversation. And it only will get harder and harder. If Lamar Jackson does not win a Super Bowl this year, and now the year is 2026, and it's July, and we're saying, what's on the line for Lamar? It's like, seriously, like, it's just gets messy. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens? What do you think's on the line for Lamar this year? And do you agree with Derrick Henry? They didn't really talk about this, but Derrick Henry said on Lamar, best player in the league. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.